Hey guys, how's it going? So today I'm going to be doing something I've never done before, something I've actually been wanting to do for a while, and that is a tier list, but I've also been wanting to do a, Vivarium roster video, kind of like where we rank them all, and so I was like, you know what, why don't I put the two together? So originally I was going to do like a two-part video where I go on about ranking all the tank animals, because I feel like they deserve some attention as well. But like I said, tier list is something I've been wanting to do, and so I just put the two together, and I think this is going to be really cool. I'm very excited to try. Sorry if it's not as perfect as other tier lists. Like I said, I've never done this before. Anyway, I've been spending the last half hour setting up this tier list on tiermaker.com. Went to the game, took all of these pictures myself, and most of them came out pretty good. A few of them not so good, like the Brazilian wandering spider, but some of them came out really good, like the lemons poison frog. And yeah, so we're just going to go through and put them each into these categories. Now, you should know I'm ranking them primarily off of what are they individually. For example, what is more exciting, a Gila monster or a simple poison frog? That's basically how I'm ranking them. Along with that, also their realism, like, are they actually zoo tank animals? I've been to a ton of zoos, and including my own zoo, I've been in pretty much everywhere around it. I've been in all the offices, all the quarantine areas, all of the veterinarian areas, the barns for all their animals. I've been going to the zoo for 6 years, and I know pretty much exactly how it works, and I'm quite surprised at how many quarantine, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said quarantine, more like how many in the storage tank animals they have. It's quite easy to obtain animals like these and quite easy to keep them anywhere, so there's a good variety I've seen, and I must say most of these are zoo tank animals, I would say, and a couple of them are not too realistic, but we'll get into that. I'm also ever so slightly going to be ranking them on their animations. I know it sounds kind of weird, but basically, these guys are all in the same boat. They're all in the same level. They sit in one place and they move individually, and that's fine. I understand why they couldn't make it more complex. It's kind of cool. Every once in a while, they'll move to a different position in the tank. You can't see it, but they'll teleport there, and it gives you the idea that time has passed and they move. It's well done, I must say. And so that's why I kind of feel like it's good to give these guys some attention. But surprisingly enough, some of them have more animation than the others. For example, the two scorpions I looked at very closely, and the desert scorpion hardly ever moves, like just a tiny bit of movement from it. But the giant forest scorpion surprisingly moves around a lot, like it lifts up its whole body and like completely shifts it over to the other side of its balancing, and it's really interesting. So some animals have their own unique animation. I've been kind of surprised about that, observing them for a while, and so yeah, maybe some slight animation judgment as well. Not really judging them on their tanks themselves. The tanks are all especially like at the same level, but anyway, hopefully you kind of get a good idea of my perspective on ranking these guys. Also, last thing before we begin, actually two things. First thing, I'm going to be putting this tier list in the description below, so you can go and try it out for yourself. Also on the social media pages, so I guess you can find it there as well. And second thing, the categories. So here are the categories. First off, we got forgettable, right? These are... Oh, I just realized the colors are backwards. Sorry, I will switch that in a moment. Red was supposed to be the bottom. Yellow was supposed to be green. Okay, sorry. You know what? Just give me 1 second. Sorry about that, guys. Here is the proper coloring. As you can see, like green on the top, red on the bottom, and so yeah, forgettable animals. The tank animals that hardly ever come to mind and are just simple. Very forgettable and decent. There are some decent animals in here. Just okay, it's fine, but they're not your first thought or your second. And then good animals are kind of like your second thought. They're good choices. Healthy choices, but they're not the best. Of course, the best is top tank, and yeah. Anyway, I think I've been saying enough. Let's just go ahead and actually begin the list. All right, kicking things off with the boa constrictor, one of the OG animals from the whole entire tank roster. So not really much to say that hasn't already been said about this animal. I'd say the biggest problem it has is its model. You'll notice a lot of the models on these tank animals are just not as good as they could be. I understand why. You know, these animals are substantially smaller than basically any other animals in the game. I get it. But I feel like the bow model could have been improved a little bit. I mean, some of the other snake models are really good. This one just, it's not as good as it could be. Also, the animal, if we're being completely honest, is quite forgettable. Almost forgettable. It's still an OG animal in the game, and of course, it in and of itself is a boa constrictor, which is quite classic, and so, you know, at least it's decent. I'd say that's probably the best place for it. Alright, well now we're going to go ahead and do the Gila monster. Okay, for this one, it's so easy. It's so obvious what this animal has to be. Of course, it's a top tank, right? I mean, come on, it's the Gila monster. It is the only non-iguana lizard on the entire roster, which makes me really sad because, come on, lizards are just like the kings and queens of tanks, even more so than snakes. When I think of tanks, I think of lizards. And it's kind of a shame that we only have 3, and 2 of them are iguanas. I think that's a lot of BS, if I'm being completely honest, and we desperately need some more lizards for the Vivarium roster. Still, though, because of how unique the Gila monster is and all of this, and honestly, it's the Gila monster, which is just incredible in and of itself, it perfectly fits as a top tank animal. Okay, so next is the Goliath Bird Eater. Quite frankly, just a decent animal. It's just, it's the big brown spider that figuratively eats birds in the game. I mean, obviously we're not going to ever see that, but, you know, that's what it does in the real world. It's, first off, I have a bit of a fear of spiders, you know, definitely only one. Trying to get over that, but still, it's just, I'm not going to let that affect my choice. But I just want to make that clear. Anyway, though, it does look, in terms of, I mean, it is terrifying. It is a massive spider, so at least that's kind of cool. But what else is it? The models, you'll notice that a lot of these spider and tarantula models are just not as good as they could be. And I understand why. These kind of animals have lots of curves, and they're all furry, and it's just, I get why it could be a little difficult to render that, considering how small they are. Still, it's decent. It's almost forgettable. But yeah, I feel like it fits decent pretty well. Next, we have the yellow anaconda, which I actually put as a good animal. I know a lot of people will disagree because a lot of people are angry at it because it took the place of the green iguana. I mean, sorry, did I just say green iguana? I'm sorry, green anaconda. And I'm cool with it. I'm cool with the yellow anaconda. Of course, I, just like everyone else, would have preferred the green one. But you know what, who cares, right? At least, just like all the other animals, unlike all the other animals, it sticks out in its size. It's pretty freaking huge. It is the largest tank animal, and even from a distance, I can still spot it in the tank, which is kind of cool. Unlike a lot of the other animals on this list, we have to go searching for them. But I think mainly because of how big it is and how cool it looks, I would consider it a good animal, at least for me personally. I know other people would disagree, but whatever, right? Alright, next we have the golden poison frog, which I would put as a forgettable animal. I think it's very underwhelming. I mean, it's quite basic. Even the Lehm's poison frog is more interesting than it, but it really is just a small, very bright yellow frog, not much more. I would have preferred something, another type of poison frog, like the poison dart frog. There's a couple more in my mind. I don't know the exact name of them, but there were plenty of dart frogs that could have been better. I get why they did this one, so they don't have to worry about like coloring and whatnot. It's quite an easy coloring. Whatever, I don't care. Still, you know, it's fine, but I would say it's almost a decent animal, but it is also just quite forgettable, and is really there just to be a filler, I'd say. Next, we have the green iguana, which I would put as a good animal, almost top tank, but why it doesn't make it there is just it's a bit underwhelming in terms of what it is. I'm happy we got the lesser Antillean iguana, but I would prefer it if they just stayed away from the green iguana and done some other kind of unique lizard. But also, the green iguana, just like the Mexican red-knee tarantula on this list, are a bit more domesticated than the rest, and I feel like I get why they have them. You know, it's easy for zoos to have green iguanas, but they're also just very common pets, and so it's, you know, not as exciting, I would say. You know, everything I'm saying right now accounts for the Mexican red-knee tarantula, but we'll get to that one a bit. But yeah, the green iguana, it's underwhelming. Still, the model looks cool, even though it's really not super close to depicting the green iguana. But I don't really care. It looks like a tiny T-Rex in a tank, and I love that. Still, the lizards are just awesome. Even if there's still, again, major lack. Anyway, though, but yeah, it's a good animal, and not much more. Next would be the giant burrowing cockroach, I believe was what it was called. I put it as a decent animal. You know, it's almost forgettable, but at least it looks kind of cool. It's unique. It looks like some giant isopod for some reason, even though it's not. If I was okay, for a lot of these animals, I'm putting myself in in the perspective of, say, of actually like choosing animals for the roster. Like I'm putting myself in Frontier's shoes. If I was gonna have to pick a cockroach species, I would have done like the Madagascar hissing cockroach. But you know, whatever. Okay, anyway, next one, the Amazonian giant centipede. Of course, is a top tank animal. I love this animal, despite how much I'm terrified of it. It is, if I'm being completely honest, very just, come on, it's a giant centipede. That's nightmarish. I have nightmares about an animal like this. I've seen how big they get. And of course, because of that, I think it's awesome. It's very unique. There's no other animal like it in the game. I'm grateful to have it. I'm glad that Frontier chose it. And also its buddy, the giant tiger land snail. They kind of just stick out in a really good way for some reason. So it's exciting to have in my zoos. It's on my mind when I think of tank animals. It perfectly fits a top tank animal for me. Next would be the lesser Antillean iguana, the OG of all tank animals. I would consider it a top tank. Mainly, yeah, because it is original, it's one benefit, but it's also really cool, you know. Again, if they had done something else with the green iguana, mainly because it's the more domesticated one, the lesser Antillean iguana would be even more special than it already is, but because it's just the other of two iguanas in the game, it's not as awesome as I'd like it to be. Anyway, the model just looks awesome, despite the fact that, again, it's not depicting the real-life version as accurate as it could be. Still, it's an awesome animal to have. When you think of tank animals in this game, the lesser Antillean iguana comes into mind, and it feels like a good top tank animal. So next is the classic. No, it's not classic. Sorry, I don't know why I call this a classic, but yeah, Goliath frog. This thing is just a beast. I'd put it as a good one. I wouldn't put it as a top tank top tank because the amphibians just kind of feel a little underwhelming in all of this, and really, I wish if there was like it doesn't. It's complicated because well, at the end of the day, the thought of it being a Goliath frog is really cool. It's kind of a prime example of Frontier just going for the biggest of what they can, so it's easier to make. So I don't really feel like they picked this one with passion or anything like that, but whatever, right? It's still cool. It's a giant frog. These guys will eat and sometimes eat so much that they die, and it's crazy. It's very unique and almost a top tank animal, and maybe it could be at one. I'm sure others would put it at top tank, but for me it fits as a good tank animal. All right, so next we have the eastern brown snake. I would put this one as also a good animal, good tank animal, because, well, first off, this is a severely dangerous animal. I mean, you will die in seconds if you get bit by this animal. It's one of the most dangerous animals in the world, and so. In terms of realism, I don't know if zoos have these guys a lot. Perhaps. I'm sure if a zoo does have them, you want to for sure take extra time to make sure this animal cannot get out. It would be like a prized possession, but a dangerous one, and so I think that's pretty awesome. Plus, the model looks really good as well, and I mean, what else can I say? I think it's just a really solid tank animal to have. But as far as snakes goes, I have some things to say about the adders. We'll get to that in a bit. And next would be the Mexican red tarantula, a forgettable animal for me personally, just like the grand iguana, a for sure domesticated animal, because they're far more calm compared to other spiders, and so I get why people like to keep them in captivity, and they fit well in like kids centers at zoos and whatnot, but they're really not that exciting. Plus, the model on the Mexican red tarantula, I've gotten really close to it in the game, and it just looks really bad for some reason. It looks slightly unfinished, and I don't really like that. You just have to go see it for yourself. So yeah, model's not nearly as good as it could be. It's not as overwhelming as I'd like it to be. Well, okay, not overwhelming, but it's not as awesome as I'd like it to be. It's just, whatever. It's forgettable. That's the best way I could put the Mexican Renny Tarantula. Next, we have the Western Diamondback Rattlesnake. For sure, a top tank for me. I love this animal. It's awesome looking. It also is depicted very well in the game. Looks exactly like a Western Diamondback Rattlesnake. Simply, I think this one is most exciting because of just what it is. I mean, it's a Western Diamondback Rattlesnake. That name is just such a kick-ass name for some reason. But yeah, this was a for sure given animal. I'm grateful to have this, even though we missed out on animals like king cobras, which I'm quite surprised at. It's good to see that we got a rattlesnake. And of course it perfectly fits up here. And also, uniquely in the game, it does shake its rattle. Unlike any of the other snakes, it doesn't, obviously, none of the other snakes would shake their tail, but they give a little extra touch of just shaking its tail, and I love that. It is a top tank animal for me. Next we have the Brazilian wandering spider. Personally, just a decent animal. Yeah, it's interesting. It's the only spider in the game. Like the rest of them are all tarantulas. I'm not so sure if there's many major differences. Like, is it safe to call the Goliath bird eater a spider? I really don't know. But the Brazilian wandering spider is pretty unique in terms of what it is. But realism's sake, it's just I don't recall a single time in history of a zoo ever containing these guys, or even like exotic spider collectors. I don't understand why anyone would want to. These are like one of the most dangerous invertebrates on the planet. They're highly venomous, and I personally, if I was ever to get into like tarantula keeping, which I can promise you I won't or wouldn't, I would never want to just have this in my house, considering I imagine they would be good escape artists. I don't know for sure, but I just would not want to deal with this. And in general, I just don't think zoos could get their hands on an animal like this. Really, so it's if we're being honest, the big problem with it is it's kind of unrealistic and also a little unnecessary, if we're being honest. A good replacement would have been like the giant huntsman spider. Still, I wouldn't classify it as like a forgettable animal because, it's still a spider. It's still unique. But it's whatever, right? It's just a whatever animal. Next is the common deaf adder. So this is interesting. There are two adders in the game. Common deaf adder and puff adder. Personally, I don't think we needed them both. I'm sure a lot of people would agree. I'm putting it as decent. I would have taken out the common deaf adder. I mean, they both have awesome names. We cannot deny that. Think about it. Puff adder, that kind of sounds like you get bloated and then you die from the venom. That sounds terrifying. But common deaf adder as well, just as scary. Still, though, it would have been so much better if it was replaced by like the king cobra, But whatever. It's almost forgettable, but it's still decent because the model looks cool, and it's got like little horns on its model. I kind of like that. Yeah, whatever. It's a decent animal, but also nearly forgettable. I can just say that. Next would be the giant desert scorpion, I believe it was. I think it's the name. I would consider this another decent animal. The animation this one has like the worst animation because I've looked at it a lot and it hardly ever moves. I'm kind of surprised by that. I don't get why, but just whatever. At least the model's cool, I guess, and it does fit into the game nicely. It's kind of a shame we didn't get like emperor scorpions, but I get why they didn't do that. It would have looked too much like the giant forest scorpion. But still, this was a good scorpion choice. It fits in zoos because it's very much indeed a common zoo tank animal, and the model's fine. It just has very, very boring animations. Not that that really matters too much. So I would almost put it as a good animal, but it's just a simple, almost forgettable scorpion at the end of the day. So next we have the giant tiger land snail, which of course is a top tank animal. I mean, come on, it's a giant snail. What more could you want in life, right? What more could you want? I would pay to have one of these in my house in like a nice big glass tank and just watch them slowly do their thing all day. I love it. I'm so grateful Frontier gave us a mollusk in the game. It was not necessary, and I'm just like the Amazonian giant centipede, a truly appreciative animal to have. I'm sure a lot of people will agree with me. It's one of the coolest, obviously, simply just because of how unique it is. I mean, it's a giant snail. Again, what more could you ask for in life? Yeah, perfect top tank. What else can I say? Next, we have the Brazilian wandering spider. Nope, sorry, I don't know why you just call it that. My bad. I guess that's one of the flaws. We have two spiders and tarantulas called Brazilian, or start with Brazilian. This is the Brazilian salmon pink tarantula. That was it. A lot of people don't like this one for some reason, and I can kind of understand, but I would again put it as a decent. This whole category is just like the very, very simplest of animals. But it's fine, you know, it's a good specimen. Personally, if I was going to pick another spider or tarantula species to have, I would have gone with like the cobalt blue tarantula. That would have been beautiful. They're very beautiful, despite how terrifying they still are, because they're tarantulas, but whatever. Still, the Brazilian wandering, again, I almost called it that, sorry. Brazilian salmon pink tarantula. It's fine, right? Whatever. It's no real problems with it. In terms of all the other spiders and tarantula, I'd say its model's actually pretty good. Definitely a common tarantula as well, and I'd say it fits in nicely. It's just decent overall. Next, we have the puff adder. Interesting one indeed. I've actually grown on the puff adder in this game. I think the model looks really cool. Well, especially mainly just the patterning. I would put it as a good animal. It was a good choice overall. Again, if we didn't get the death adder, maybe it'd be a little bit higher. It'd be higher because it's simply an adder, which is awesome. But you know, again, we did not need to. Whatever though, right? It's a definitely a very solid snake to have. I'm very excited to see how we will ever get more like tank animals. How are they going to distribute more tank animals out through DLCs? It would be kind of cool to get like free, like a free tank animal per update, and we'll in the updates with the smaller DLCs. That would be really awesome. Yeah, I can imagine something like that. But I'm very curious to see whatever kind of snakes they give us. Keeping my fingers crossed with the king cobra and the emerald tree boa. Those are two I really want. Oh, also, I completely forgot my favorite, the eyelash viper. Oh yeah, I love those guys. They're gorgeous. Okay, 4 more left. We have next the Titan beetle, I believe this is. Yeah, the Titan beetle. Forgettable, honestly. I would consider this pretty forgettable. Why exactly? I don't know for sure. Probably because it's just whatever. It was a weird choice to begin with. This animal, I don't recall like ever appearing in anything zoological. I've seen pictures of it online simply because it's just so huge, but nothing else for it. I've never seen any videos on it. I've never seen just anything about this animal. And then Frontier clearly only went for it due to its massive size, and so it would be easier to make. That's obviously all it is. And at the end of the day, probably one of the worst animals of the whole entire Vivarium roster. Sorry to say that, all you Titan beetle fans, I guess, if there's any. Anyway, next we have the giant forest scorpion. I would actually say a good animal. I really like it. The animation surprised me. I looked at it and it has one of the best. It literally gets up and moves around a bit more than the rest of them. It moves its body from side to side. I forgot what it did. It did something with like its pinchers, where it kind of like scratched something of it. It scratched itself. I remember that, and that was awesome. So yeah, the animation's cool. It's a good choice overall because it's like the largest scorpion in the world, and overall just a really good choice, I'd say. Next we have the Goliath beetle, and surprisingly enough, I would consider this a top tank animal. I think is a good, out of all the invertebrate choices, or I should say specifically the insect choices, so it's the Titan beetle, cockroach thing, and Goliath beetle, it was the best choice. This is a beetle that people, collectors and zoos strive to get as well. I've seen them in zoos before, and like for example the Houston Zoo's amazing insectorium, they have an entire Goliath beetle exhibit. They are just a good example of a beetle that zoos would naturally go for. Plus they're just beautiful overall. It stands out in some way, right? It just looks cool, and it is like the rhino beetle replacement of the game, because I'm sure that's an animal a lot of people wanted, including myself. But I'm grateful to have the Goliath beetle. It was a good choice. And lastly, we have the Lehem's poison frog. Interesting one. I would probably put this one as actually decent. Yeah, a lot of decent animals. Primarily because it just looks kind of it's a pretty looking frog. I like the colors it has. It has a good conservation status, and it was this game introduced me to this animal. I've never heard of it before until now, and so I can give it all credit for that. But still, again, just like the golden poison frog, almost nearly forgettable, I would say. It is really almost there as a filler. You know, when you just put down small frogs, both it and the golden poison frog are really interchangeable and hardly even noticeable as what they are, but just whatever, right? It's still a decent animal. And yeah, so guys, that is it. That is my Planet Zoo Vivarium roster tier list, right? I hope you guys enjoyed this. First time I've ever done this. I think I did somewhat of a decent job. Please let me know what you think down in the comments below. I'm nearing 1,000 subs, almost, I believe, like about 10 subs away, and I am very interested and excited. I'm just excited. I'm excited to reach 1,000 subs. I have an interesting idea for reaching 1,000 subscribers. Because I gotta make a video about it. And please, to help me get there, please hit the like button and subscribe. It does, just like everyone else says, mean a lot to the YouTuber themselves, which would be me. Which would be me. And of course, again, I very appreciate it. I'd appreciate it if you guys would do that, if you haven't already. And also, please let me know what you thought of this list. Again, I'll leave it in the description down below so you can go and do it yourself. Maybe review the actual setup list anyway. Just give me your thoughts, guys. I love hearing the opinions. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching this video, and stay tuned for the next one. Bye-bye.